Welcome back. Let's not waste time because this one's going to be real special.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep, sound and clear.
Cool. So you got me connected to the recording device.
Yep, its levels are looking good on both channels, and the record button is engaged. So.
Unbelievable! Damn!
Excellent.
Hell yeah!
Good, man. Well, Ivan, welcome to what I have chosen to call a history of rock and roll in film and rock and roll. You may call it what you like. Wanted to say thank you so much in advance for making this time because it's an honor. It's a pleasure. I was doing a bunch of research on the movie White Zombie as well as everything I could find on your former band as well, which I was a huge fan of Los Exorcisto and that whole era of music, of heavy music, really hit when I was just getting into playing guitar and stuff. So it was so nice. It was so nice to have a band like, a player like you in a band like that was a little more original than the average thrash band or the average sort of 80s holdover metal bands that were still going at the time, and just a different flair entirely. And it was very, very cool. It was like kind of years later I got into the Ramones, and I felt the same way I felt about White Zombie. Like, I could be entertained just looking at pictures of these guys. Like, they just look so cool all the time. Like, how do they do it? But yeah.
Yeah, man. And that, goes back, inspiration from other bands as well. We all had different backgrounds. Rob was really a Kiss fan.
Yeah.
I was a fan of more like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Slayer, Black Sabbath, and so in Motorhead, so I got the more of the biker, heavy, leather and spikes, bullet belt, punk. I like punk rock too, because that's just badass, like dressing up where you were just looking like a tough guy. Because I was born and raised in Brooklyn, and I had to be a tough guy, otherwise I get jumped every day. You know what I mean? So that was a big thing for me, is getting my look down.
Yeah. And
a lot of it is it would help my confidence and confidence when you keep your head up, when you're walking down the street. And then, Rob really loved the whole element with Kiss, and Sean was also Motorhead, AC/DC, Black Sabbath. We all loved Black Sabbath. Jay didn't know about Black Sabbath till later, but that was kind of like one of the big foundations. But for me, it was that as well. And then, of course, like I said, Slayer and Iron Maiden and all that good stuff.
Yeah, man. I mean,
yeah.
Was it Clive Burr was the first Maiden drummer that was on the records? And I think he does. He gets kind of washed out of the history sometimes. Doesn't get enough love. His work on the kick pedal was great. Nico McBrain obviously is amazing, who replaced him.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
There's a real cool sort of, I don't know, tougher, less precise vibe to some of the early stuff, and obviously Dave Lombardo is not as precise a drummer as like a couple guys I've seen in Slayer after he left for a while, but it's just more fun watching Dave play. It's a little more. He's so technically great, but he's also kind of a loose cannon at the same time. He's not going to play everything the same way every time.
That's what I love about him. He comes more from the heart. It's not like trying to be a clone of what he did on the record. You know what I mean? Like having it come and being created as we go, and that really inspired me as well. You know what I mean? Like drummers that or any entertainer that creates like in the moment is going to have something, because it keeps us on our toes. You know what I mean? It keeps us like, holy shit, what's going to happen next, kind of thing. Because it's all about the show, right? You're putting on a show, and it's so I love that element, and I like that with Mitch Mitchell, with Jimi Hendrix, drummer.
Yep.
He was an inspiration, actually. During the time I was writing Les Exorcisto, I was also listening to a lot of that.
Nice.
And yeah. So, and of course the Beastie Boys, it's something I like to share a lot of that, because that it had a lot of that hip hop grooves.
Yes.
Those beats, Run DMC, just like the heavy, straight up groove, you know what I mean? And
80s New York hip hop, man. It left its mark on metalheads for sure.
Yeah. Because when you have that bounce and you have that beat, you can do anything.
And then you get the Bomb Squad with Public Enemy in the late 80s, and it's like, how is it this dense and this complex and still has a bounce and a swing to it? That was genius.
Yeah. Exactly.
I was going to ask about how things kind of came together for you with Boundless Joy. You've been back out on tour for, I assume, the first time actively touring in a while. You've been running a recording studio down in Oregon at the same time. How's the last couple of years been for you? Feeling kind of reinvigorated and,
Yeah. We released a record last year, and it's exciting. It's really exciting because this band has that Black Sabbath element as well, with grooves, bounce, beat, and the singer actually sings, not just the growl.
Yeah.
Kind of like Ozzy, and he's got so he's a good front man. He plays guitar at the same time, so it's only a 3-piece, and I love that. I love that. It keeps it simple and less drama. When you have an actual musician as a singer as opposed to just a singer,
right?
To get and we all we lock in perfectly. I feel like I got a great match here with the guys. I know them through some teaching, because we're all instructors, music instructors. They teach their instrument as well. And so we all came together and just started the band.
When you say less drama, man, I gotta assume having 3 teachers is going to be a little smoother sailing when it comes to the communication factor. People that are, it's sort of incumbent on them to break things down into simpler concepts for someone else to understand. Like, people think,
and that's what's great. Yeah. Because to be a teacher, you have to have patience.
Yes,
you have to have patience for the listener, who's going to be your student, who doesn't know what you're talking about. Right. So you gotta make it easy, and it's humbling. It's important to get rid of that ego, especially when you're in a band, because it's really. It really sucks when you have the other members of your band that think they're the bigger and better than you. And
note to the listener, that is foreshadowing for a point that will come up later. But before then, have you been spending quality time on your Radish mattress this week, or is it time to buy a new one, perhaps?
The story I wanted to ask about first was from back in the CBGB's days. Sean, in her book, had a couple funny anecdotes about the early days and what it was like. You could get on there. Like, there was so many bands playing every single week at CB's. It wasn't like it was impossible to break in, but once you got in, it was still kind of haphazard as far as who you're going to end up on a bill with or what time of day you're going to play or whatever. And there's always, sometimes it's just packed houses because there's 10 bands playing one day, one afternoon. And she said your mom would attend a lot of those shows, but would end up doing things like setting off the fire alarm because she got weirded out by all the smoke in the air. So she opened the emergency exit door in the back to let some fresh air in or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, my mom was all about, she was a very health conscious woman. She lost her first child, her first baby. So I have one brother and one sister, but and I'm the youngest, and my sister is the oldest. But before her, she had a sister that only lived a couple of weeks, and so she was traumatized from the medical industry, and so that pushed her into really being health conscious, and she got freaked out by anything that's going to cause any health problems.
Yeah.
And one of the big things is car exhaust.
Oh.
Or she would like stop guys on the street and tell them to turn their motor off.
Wow.
You know, because they were sitting there idling. You know, in New York, you got these cars double parked. They're idling forever all day long, just leaving their motor running.
In an
and you're
era,
just sitting there like
when there's no unleaded fuel and there's just crime rates are skyrocketing in the city because everyone's breathing in lead all the time and getting brain damage.
Yeah, exactly. And so I bring her to the concert, and she would sit. She would always pull up a chair right in front of the stage. While everybody else behind her is just like moshing and going crazy, you know? And she would keep her fingers, both fingers in both ears, the whole time looking up at us.
Right. That's amazing.
Yeah. But she would actually go to the back and open the door and says, "Let the air in, pollution," you know.
And what was she the first like of her family to immigrate to America, or did she come over with her parents, or she came over when she was an adult?
She came with her parents, and they all migrated to America.
And from
after World War II.
From what country was it?
She came from Ukraine, but from the Ukraine they went to Poland. And in Poland, it was during World War II, and she was moved there. She was in a camp,
Jesus.
And then they moved her, and then she was able to get out. Her mom actually, she would always tell me that she would flirt with the Nazis, and she would get. I guess she was able to, through flirting with the Nazis, somehow make her way to America.
Work what you got.
I don't know what she did, man. I don't know, but you know, whatever she did, I'm here. So
yes. Thoughts of mine on the directorial style of Victor Halperin. We are almost a character in the story ourselves as a spectator or a voyeur, the way he shoots a lot of it. Legendre, played by Bela Lugosi, multiple times will stare directly at us in the film. I mean, no less than like 4 or 5 times in the movie. He's all alone. There's no one else in the shot. It had been, as the commentary points out, it had been common practice for things to be filmed more like a stage play. Not a lot of staring directly at the audience. And up to this point, and if you did film someone staring, let's say diagonally towards the lens or straight forward towards the lens, it would be because you were about to then cut to another character facing that person and then get their reaction. Not the case with this. So it puts you as the viewer and the audience member squarely in the sights of the villain, you know, and you don't know there's no stated purpose for this that you can compare this to from previous films or stage plays. His appearance is also crafted to remind viewers of this era of portrayals of Mephistopheles in Faust. The movie also leaves varying degrees of ambiguity as to just how much the supernatural might be playing into the zombie element, the turning of someone into a zombie and the control of someone as a zombie. There's a special powder involved that he's got, and there's like alchemy, as I mentioned before, combined with voodoo practices and ritualistic behavior. But you don't know how many of those elements are to what degree are they all important in the hierarchy of this process? You know, what does it take to turn someone exactly? What does it take to control someone? There's clear indications that if Legendre's character is maybe weakened or hit in the head or something, he starts to lose his grip on Madeline. I don't know if that means that out in the fields there's zombies that are suddenly starting to regain control of their own consciousness, or if they're too far gone and they've just been given their orders if you know the movie inside out and you've memorized everything about it, I apologize if you're like, they actually say that, Jay, because this time I watched it with commentary and it wasn't explained. But I don't remember there being a very explicit breakdown, and I think that I value this story because of that ambiguity. It lets you wonder. The commentary notes there is a common theme of science versus religion in a lot of the horror movies of the time. But in this movie, it's not as bare or as stark as you get in a Frankenstein film. It is, it's or some of the other universal horror stories where it's like the old world is the supernatural and the young hero has sort of rationality and science on their side, but they don't. That's sort of one of their weaknesses because they don't believe what's actually happening is happening for the reasons that it's happening to them. Things like that. In this case, White Zombie, it's a lot more of a gray area there. The direction is, I found the direction to be very deliberate and well thought out. Short scenes that are, if it's a short scene that accomplishes more with less activity, they're framed and angled in a way that's very striking and very powerful and sometimes even off-putting, making you uncomfortable for being there. Longer exchanges are set up with a camera that, like a camera move that will draw you in as a voyeur, like you're almost entering through like a window, like you're peeking in on somebody's private time, and then it settles us in comfortably for a long, uninterrupted take for an important character exchange. There's strong undertones of sexual possession, sexual greed, sexual control, and dominance of an unwilling partner. Implications of necrophilia, if you are to believe that Legendre and Madeleine are at least partly undead at some point. The Beaumont character, the tough guy, the Brom Bones, if you will, or the what's the character from Beauty and the Beast? The old Disney. Why? Gaston. No one's this Gaston. Why, Gaston? You are positively primeval. Beaumont reminds me of those kind of characters. Tough, outdoorsy action man, but possessive and envious and controlling. So he makes a deal with Legendre to, get possession of Madeleine through Legendre's mind control powers, zombification powers, and he gets screwed in the deal. Ha ha ha, screwed. Because he starts to realize this woman he wanted to steal away from her husband, Neil, is not really present mentally with him. She's like a shell of her former self and only acting on memory of her past life. Then possible homosexual theme to Legendre saying, "I've taken a fancy to you," when he double crosses Beaumont, and he starts manipulating his character to control his mind as well. Everybody's having a bad time at that point in the movie. Everyone's screwed. Neil's off drinking and miserable, and there's a great scene of him just being despondent in a, I don't know what it's like it's a house, it's a shack of some kind where people are dancing, but they're only in shadows. There's loud music and people whooping it up, but you don't see those people. You see him at a table all disheveled by himself with a couple of bottles, and he's physically kind of flailing a bit and crumbling, and people are having a great time very near to him, but he's not a part of them at all. It's striking imagery and very powerful, very cool. You get all you need to know visually about the level of despair that he's fallen into. You don't need him to deliver a speech. You don't need him to talk about how much he loves her and how great she was. And there's so many movies that would have to do that now. And in the past, of course, but, tell some old anecdote about a time between the two of them that really showed him what a great person she was or something like, nope, we get it all from a very, very short, very visual and very loud scene of him being a miserable putz by himself. It also indicates his sort of impotence and his lack of action he can take. And I'm not saying that to degrade him as a character. It's just, he's fucked. Like, he's a long way from home. He has no allies here except the old doctor, which we'll get to. And he is in a bad way and does not see any possible positive outcomes, at least not that he can make happen with his own actions all alone as a stranger here, when this crazy demonic man is very methodically and very handily taking over people's minds, and he has a whole army of zombies on his side if anyone rises up against him. So the virginal flower in the form of Madeline has been sullied in the form of being taken over by this evil older man and given to another evil younger man. I mean, I think we can take the implication there of what they wanted her for. But even though Beaumont is unhappy with what he's been left with, given, when he made this bargain to possess another person, and then he gets double crossed by Legendre, who then says, "Oh, I've also taken a fancy to you," and he starts using his voodoo powers on him, the evil eyes and the grasping of his hands in this weird way, and then now he's lost all of his agency. It's almost like the creation of a Renfield type, the slave to Dracula, out of this willful, burly kind of strong man. Not this, he's on his way to becoming that sort of a pathetic creature like Renfield was. I can't help but make Dracula comparisons. It's just too close in the timeline, and it's got Bela Lugosi, and it's, it makes sense. It's cool. I like the themes.
And what themes do you like for yourself? Are they radish-centric? Are they mattress-oriented? Maybe they should be. Think about it, won't you? Radish Mattress is proud to sponsor a history of rock and roll in film and rock and roll. Now and forever. Let's return now to some serious conversation with Ivan about his family lineage. Blessedly, without notification noises from Jay's cellular phone interrupting this time, because he figured out he needed to mute it after the first 10 minutes.
It's amazing just to think that we're not that far removed generation-wise from the people that, were in camps, for crying out loud, and had to leave their entire families, or lost their families, or had to leave their home country and their whole culture and learn a new language and try to downplay their accent in the new world or whatever they had to do to get, a job and stuff.
Yeah, and that was just one generation ago, and we gotta all realize that what happened can happen again really fast.
Yeah.
And it's kind of scary, the way some of these people can be out there. You know what I mean? The level of cruelty people can do to one another, especially when you see these other countries what they're doing to their people.
Yeah.
It's insane, but let's not go there.
Well, yeah,
we can get really dark.
It's bad to dehumanize people, and it sucks to watch it happen. I'm with you, man. And it's interesting. Like, it is a dark road to go down, and literally every podcast is talking, every YouTube channel talks about the current event stuff, and I'm just trying to keep abreast of it as best I can without tricking myself into thinking that like. This is worth losing my mind over because there's things I just don't have any influence over. But part of your brain doesn't realize that. Like the part of your brain that panics or goes into fight or flight mode when it's stressed out doesn't know you're just listening to a news broadcast or a podcast and getting pissed off about a thing that you can't actually confront. But you gotta, but then if I don't stay informed, I feel like I'm missing out on what's going on in my whole, Anyways,
and the thing is, that's like the stuff that's out there. A lot of it is out of our hands. We can't control what's out there, but we can control what's going on here at home and with your band, with the people. So treat the people around you with kindness and compassion, and don't fuck over those who are with you or nobody. Just have respect.
Yeah.
Here at home, and then that ripple effect. Because if you treat others and they'll treat others and they'll treat others, it's all paying it forward. And
It is.
So what we can control is right here. So
yeah, establishing community and maintaining it, checking in on your friends, you know, just in a practical sense, you know, creating more of a sense of acceptance and kindness and respect.
Exactly.
Even for folks that are waving flags I don't agree with, I'll leave it at this for myself. I can't complain. Right. I can't complain all day long that there are forces out there that are misleading the people that, you know, are vulnerable to this sort of disinformation, and then get mad at a stranger who's been a victim of that disinformation and misleading propaganda as if they have the same background as I do. You know, like it's like, okay, I have to admit the thing that I'm mad at has an effect on people, and therefore it's not the victim's fault unless, you know, they're speaking of good people and good influences. I want to ask about a couple different eras in your drumming life with White Zombie. When it comes to, let's say, an incident or a mentor, or not even just a teacher, but like a person who gave you, even if it was one tiny little insight that made your life better or your drumming easier or your load in faster. Because, you know, you have those musicians that have been around a little longer and they're like, hey, don't do that. Do that this way. Or, hey, I think you're holding the sticks in a way that's going to probably cause you some problems later. You might try, or you might try setting up your drums different.
Well, it actually starts off back in high school. You know, when I started off with White Zombie, I had a buddy of mine in school. His name was Jim Duke. He was an awesome metalhead drummer. He played double bass, and I think that was the first time I was just talking about double bass with him.
Yeah,
and we were just talking about some trading drum licks and whatnot. Ray Luzier, you know who Ray Luzier is? He's the drummer from Korn. Actually, he's the current drummer. Current drummer. Yeah.
He's done a lot of cool side projects too. With like, didn't he have a band with like Doug Pinnick and George Lynch as well?
Yeah, and and so he showed me a couple of.
So I have to ask about the guys that kind of came and went like a year at a time early on that I could find a little information on. Obviously, Jay Yuenger is, you know, my era. Before that was John Ritchie on Make Them Die Slowly. But I didn't know anything about Tim Jeffs, was supposedly from 86 to 87, and Tom Five from 87 to 88. Any thoughts on those guys, or, you know, attitude wise, playing wise, good or bad, or what your memories of those dudes are?
I was overwhelmed by all the players that came and went, because they're all so cool, talented. I really enjoyed everything about each member that came and went, because we were able to all create so well together. And starting with Tim Jeffs, he was the first player when I came in the room with White Zombie and we started jamming. He was more of a bluesy kind of player. I was more of a metalhead, but I enjoyed it because, you know, I love all kinds of music. So Tim, we only released that 45 together, and great songs. And you know, it was not it was a very early stage of White Zombie. We didn't really develop our whole thing yet.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun, and it was cool, and you know, and he had so much appreciation for the band and for everything. I'm not sure. I think he needed to continue his schooling or something, because they were in Parsons University together.
Oh, okay. So he was from the same art school as Sean and
same
Rob.
Art school. They were all of the members were in and out of the art schools, from what I understand, except Jay.
Yeah.
Jay, and I'm not sure about John Ritchie, if he was at the art school as well. I don't recall that. But yeah, and then after Tim Jeffs, there was you know, Ine Kastabi was the first guy before I was in the band.
Oh,
there was another guitar player before Tim Jeffs. Ine Kastabi was actually in another band with Sean and I before White Zombie called Life.
Ah.
Yeah.
That's
and that's exactly how White Zombie came about, because Rob and Sean were dating while the band Life was going on. And then when that band broke up, Rob and Sean put together White Zombie with Peter. And then when Peter left the band, Ine left the band, and then Tim just came aboard, and then I came aboard. So 2 members already left the band when I joined.
And you're still in high school, right?
And I was still in high school. I wasn't even a senior yet. I was a junior.
Wow. Oh, my God. That's amazing. So like 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, and then Tom 5 was the guy after Tim.
Yeah. Tom 5, when he joined we really developed a new sound with him. He was such a wild player, and would he very artistic, and from the way he dressed to his sound, very different than anybody out there. So we developed that thing, and we did a tour together, and released the Soul Crusher album.
Right.
Actually, we did Psycho Head Blowout first.
Right.
Before the full album. Psycho Head Blowout was, I believe, an EP.
Yep.
And
Soul Crusher. And those are just self-released,
Soul Crusher. Right? Oh, yeah. And then Caroline Records picked us up at some point.
To break from the White Zombie timeline and its current part of the narrative, let's jump back to some of the history according to Jay Yuenger and his approach to recording and gear. But also consider supporting the show by buying another Radish mattress.
So let's talk about Jay's guitar rig and Jay's also process in the studio, making a bit of the Astro Creep magic. It's, again, being pulled from his old blog from like 2008, 2009-ish that doesn't have any working photograph links anymore. So he talks about, let's see, his onstage rig from about the middle of the Astro Creep 2000 slog, not tour, not fun old time. He said, I can tell by the guitar lineup here in this photo that we can't see anymore. Left to right, we got my custom shop Black Iceman, the in straight C sharp tuning, i.e., low to high C sharp to C sharp. Everything a step and a half down from standard, right? We started using this tuning for some of the between album stuff, like Feed the Gods on our cover of Black Sabbath's Children of the Grave, and then for a bunch of Astro Creep tracks. Then my black factory made in Japan neck through Iceman. In the drop C sharp tuning. So tune your whole standard tuning guitar down a half step, then drop the lowest string down an extra full step after that to C sharp, which is the guitar I use to record the main rhythm tracks for More Human Than Human, Creature of the Wheel, etc. My main guitar for playing those tunes live. Next is a bolt-on factory Iceman in drop C sharp tuning. So when guys like this say factory, that means it's stock. It's from Ibanez. The way it came out of the case is the way he played it as far as the parts that were on the thing. Otherwise, he would probably note some customizations. Oh, we yanked out the pickups and we put in this, and this. And, he was already getting the Seymour Duncan pickups that he wanted in the guitar and the switches that he liked already. So he didn't have to pay any techs to mess with that. Then say... and then next is let's see, bolt-on, Iceman drop C sharp, which was a spare. I honestly don't remember if I ever broke a string and actually played this one. Then the Blue Robin Machete in the half-step down tuning. He recorded Los Exorcisto in standard tuning entirely with the cheap but solid Charvel 6, often referred to by fans as the 666 guitar that you see on the cover of that album. We were, as far as I can remember, dimly aware of tuning down at that point, but hadn't messed with it yet. Then sometime during the long tour for that album, we started tuning down a half step. It's amazing what the relatively minor change does to expand the width and breadth of a band's sound. And we recorded the tuned up tracks on Astro Creep, Electric Head Part 2, etc. in that tuning as well. All of which were done with the same blue Robin machete. Those are tough to find. They cost $1 million. They're made out of Texas in the 80s and 90s. Mostly, I want to say mostly the 90s. First time a lot of people that were old enough saw it was on the cover of Slaughter's The Wildlife record album. But Jay was the guy that really made it look awesome. And I tried to replicate that body shape in luthier school with a guitar that I built, and I was bad at the first time around ever trying to build a guitar from scratch. I wasn't great. So it doesn't look as cool as his, unfortunately. I had to. I'm sorry, it's going to be those, hey kids, this was before blank, blank, and blank that you have. But it's true. It was such a weird process to create a guitar design off of a pre-existing guitar design that wasn't mainstream, like a Fender Stratocaster or Telecaster or, Les Paul or whatever. All I had was a Robin Machete free catalog, like a Robin Guitars free catalog from, I don't remember what store I even got it from, because I know I didn't know any stores that sold Robin guitars. So I can't recall how I got my hands on it, but it was like not a catalog like you would flip open like a book, but you would unfold it like an old school kind of, brochure. And all I could do to copy the body shape was to put it on a overhead projector, a very strong light bulb going through a magnifying lens, essentially, that elementary and middle school and high school teachers used in the 80s and 90s, and blast that image onto, project it onto a wall, put a piece of white butcher paper up on that wall, and then trace it with a pencil, and then look at it on your workbench and see if you had successfully blown the image up to the right size to then attach a normal size guitar neck to, if you were to draw that as well. Obviously, you didn't come here to hear about the details of my tutelage at the Roberto Venn School of Luthery in Phoenix, Arizona in the year 2000. But that is how dedicated I was to trying to get something like that Robin Machete body style. And let's just say the bridge didn't end up going in a place that looked as cool as the whammy bar Floyd Rose bridge that's on Jay's guitar. And I changed the headstock to not be all flared out. I changed it to the opposite, actually. It kind of comes in like a PRS headstock, only I reversed the design. Aren't you glad you know that now? Yep. If I was putting ads in this is where they would go. But lucky you, no ads. Just unadulterated luthier tech talk. So he mentions a couple of other one-off guitars that he got from Schecter. At the time of the Astro Surf guitar. But really, when he goes back to talking about the recording, he says the guitars for the recording of tracks in this tuning for Astro Creep were pretty much evenly split between two custom shop Icemans on view here in the photo we can't see. Later, when the first factory-made signature model showed up, the green ones with the white stars on them, I retired the black one. Ibanez did a really fantastic job with the production version. There is virtually no difference with the prototype. Man, if I could buy one of those things, I would. They're impossible to find, and I think they only made I read that they made less than 5,000 of them total. So, yeah, and I'm a short guy, and Ibanez Icemans look dumb on short guys. I found out after I bought an Ibanez Iceman when I was 19, after saving up a lot of money. Just a bare bones basic one from, I think, made in China. And, put some glow-in-the-dark stars all over it. Did my best bootleg version. Anyways, to the rig, he said, on the left, there's the rack gear, which seems like a giant complex stack of stuff. But if you look closely, you can see that it's actually not. Top to bottom, there's a Furman power supply, a couple different wireless units, you can never be too careful, a Whirlwind multi-selector, Mesa signal splitter, a quality device, even though these days, when I have to send a guitar signal to a bunch of amps, I use a Radial JD7. Next, okay, just want to point out, everything he just mentioned there, is equipment that is not created for affecting the tone of your guitar as much as it is directing it to different places and, you know, this or powering it. So here we go with the tone stuff. There's a vintage MXR 31 band graphic EQ, and then a drawer containing a couple of pedals, which I think at this point was just an Ibanez Tube Screamer and an old MXR Phase 90. Okay. Now I'm going to take a moment to answer a question I get asked constantly. How did I get that cool sound on Blur the Technicolor? Well, so we know that in recording heavy guitar-driven music, to create a truly big sound, we generally want to double the guitar. That is, record two of the exact same rhythm guitar parts and pan them so that one's all the way in the left speaker, the other all the way in the right. And when he says all the way, he means by itself. It's only coming out of the left speaker, and the other one's only coming out of the right. Examples are abound in heavy rock of that tone. And you can hear like milder versions of that is like Izzy and Slash on Guns N' Roses records are panned left to right with solos going what they call up the middle, which means in both speakers equally. But Aerosmith, they did that because Aerosmith did that, you know, so you can kind of hear the differences between each guitar player, but they complement each other. Anyhow, it's a fun practice to mess with. Hey, if let's see, oh yeah, but usually, you know, lots of records are made where you have like 4 guitars on each side instead. It's tough to get double tracking done in a way that's very precise. Organically, if you want to know what double tracking sounds like in another form that's not rhythmic, not rhythm guitar parts, Randy Rhoads guitar solos were generally double tracked. Dimebag Darrell loved double tracking solos because of that same reason too. So he says, this is not easy as the technique only works if these 2 guitar tracks are as exactly identical as humanly possible. But the paradoxical thing is you can't just take one guitar apart and duplicate it on another track and try to shift it with a little delay or by a tiny increment of pitch, meaning like electronically or with tape, like just reapplying the same tape recording to the other side. You know, if you do that in a DAW, you just copy the waveform and drag it and do another track. It just sounds like one thing. Doesn't sound like 2 guitars at all. He says, that sounds like what it is, which is one guitar with an effect on it. The key to doubling guitars is that they must be alike enough to fool the brain into perceiving the 2 parts as one big one, but with enough tiny human differences to where the sound is perceived as stereo. It's very difficult. At one point during the recording of Astro Creep, I was having a lot of trouble doubling a part, and to encourage me, Terry Date, producer of Astro Creep, told me about how recording the rhythm guitar parts for Pantera's Walk, which he also produced, took something like 3 days, with Darrell growing so frustrated that he nearly put a fist through the wall. But the results are pretty stellar. If you listen to Walk, it sounds like one very large guitar. Anyway, so I wanted to use my MXR Phase 90 block logo, therefore manufactured sometime between 1977 and 1984. I bought it for $10 from a kid in the building White Zombie lived in when we first moved to LA, which I managed to set so that the rate and tone of the phase sweep, yes, I know, the Phase 90 only has one knob, but there is an internal control as well. It accented the guitar riff in a cool way. The trouble was, one guitar track wasn't going to cut it, so the guitar needed to be doubled. There's no way to have 2 guitar tracks sounding like one when the 2 have a modulating effect such as phase, unless that effect can be in sync. And how would you do that? Now let's take a quick break / sidebar to plug in an MXR Phase 90 and demo an approximation of this sound very, very roughly. Actually, not at all accurately, except for maybe pedal stuff. Right, so okay, I've got a guitar tuned down to drop D. That's not where the track is. If you listen to White Zombie's Astro Creep, it's down in full C# mode. But it's what I had handy. So I just tuned this hollow body Hagstrom down to drop D, which is not the guitar that you would use. It's got these guitarfetish.com noise canceling Dream 180 pickups. So they're more like a P90 that doesn't buzz as much as a normal P90. So that's not right either, but I don't care because the important thing is the MXR phaser sound. I have another phaser I like better for a lot of things. I have onboard phasers in this, DAW that I'm recording in that I could plug in or use. But no. The conversation today is about the orange MXR Phase 90. So I'm going with the notes from Jay where he says it was block letters on the logo where it says Phase 90. That means not the script. That means not cursive. So I've turned the script button off in my MXR Phase 95 pedal. And then I honestly forget on the other LED that's blinking at you when you use it, there's a switch for MXR Phase 45 or MXR Phase 90.
Is this a commercial?
I forget which is
MXR paying
blue and which is red. But to me, blue sounds correct.
That could be
so I'm going with that. MXR Phase 95 in blue mode, non-script. So it's just an on LED that is solid blue and a blinking LED that is flashing blue, and it sounds like this.
I don't hear anything. Oh, I get it. You're playing that thing from the album. Those aren't the notes that you play, Jay. Jay is who I'm referring to.
As opposed to FYI, the red channel with the script still turned off, which sounds like this.
I can't wait. Here it comes, right? I don't know. Are you doing it right? That's really important.
And just for the hell of it, the script channel with the script pushed in.
You're just doing this to play guitar. The sponsors of Radish Mattress do not approve of this use of time on the podcast.
I feel like the last two are way off from each other. I feel like the first one's the most extreme. The last one is the second most extreme, and then the one in the middle, the red channel with no script, is
I think we
boring.
Figured that out.
Boring. That's the word.
We got it.
For this application.
Let's move on.
And I didn't even go through the other combos I could have done with pushing and unpushing those two little buttons and changing the speeds on them or whatever.
You were going to do more?
Now, for you people who don't play guitar and don't care about any of this, I'm going to throw you a bone here.
That's me and everyone.
As we say in the Americas. And I will jump to a couple of quotes from him that aren't related to gear before I get back into the studio stuff and the explanation of how they timed those warbly phase noises.
Oh, so you're going to go back to the board
remember
stuff we don't
last
care about.
Episode where we did the full John Christ interview with Rob and Jay?
No one remembers
There's
that.
a part of his blog that I copied and pasted into this little set of notes.
Oh, you're a tech
that says,
guy, are you?
"Say, that's me with John Christ from Danzig from Guitar Magazine, February 1994. White Zombie's European tour opening for them was pretty fucking rough, but John was one of the pleasant fellows. Erie was another. Drum tech DJ White, who ended up working for us, was another, who made it bearable. Danzig were at the top of their game, and I went out into the audience every night to watch them kill it. There are a lot of stories from that tour, some of which will probably get told at some point. We met H.R. Giger in Switzerland, watched Nazi skinheads Sig Heiling to Twist of Cain, got searched for hours at every border by assault rifle-toting soldiers, laughed as Chuck Biscuits fought rhythm-challenged clapping Norwegians to keep songs' tempos right.
You're not good at reading this.
Jesse James, the West Coast Choppers Sandra Bullock guy, was Glenn Danzig's bodyguard. We stayed with them back into America as far as L.A., where they recorded Mother 93. Then, the next day, it was on to the next tour.
That was a terrible read.
If you're not aware of how much European audiences can throw off the rhythm of a live show, especially in a festival setting, feel free to check out Harry Connick Jr.
You are. Everyone's seen it.
I think live corrects hand clapping count.
Research this better.
Or something to that effect on YouTube. There's an outdoor big show he's playing. It looks like, I think it's outdoors.
That's important.
And the crowd is clapping on 1 and 3 instead of 2 and 4. And he slips an extra beat into the song, and his whole band picks up on it and responds spontaneously.
Not a word.
Spontaneously to it to force the crowd to start clapping then on 2 and 4 instead of 1 and 3. Always sucks when you're watching festival footage of your favorite band and everyone starts clapping. They're either too fast or too slow.
Yeah.
Messes with the band's head.
Very
now, before we get back to phaser talk.
Oh, something for the ladies then.
Here's another note from him about the studio. Oh, let me point something else out here. Astro Creep is an analog album. There was no Pro Tools yet, per se. All of the loops were running on a primitive DAW that was synced up to tape. But the album was recorded and mixed on 3 24-track Studer machines chained together.
You're so bad at this.
People assume that the human instruments were chopped, diced, fixed, edited in a computer the way anyone can do today. This is not the case. The guitar, bass, and drums on the album are as they were played by people in real time, working very hard. So we were talking about John Ritchie and the sort of make them die slowly era was kind of what we're getting into.
Yeah,
you guys made, was Caroline based out of Chicago? Am I remembering that right?
No, you're not. Definitely not.
Caroline had an office in New York.
Okay.
So you're wrong,
I'm
Jay.
sure they had offices elsewhere. I'm not sure.
Oh, and it was the fact that Jay.
Something in Seattle. Oh no, Seattle was Sub Pop. I think Caroline. I don't know. I know there were Virgin Records. There were like a child of Virgin.
Oh, interesting.
Company.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's funny. I've owned 2 releases on Caroline Records. One of them was the Misfits, and one of them is you guys.
Wow.
That's it. Well, not 2 releases, two bands. That's 2 bands I know of that were on Caroline that I've actually owned. But
gotcha.
Yeah. I really loved learning all about the weirdness with them and Danzig and the Misfits and what they went through business wise with those recordings. But
yeah.
it took me years to find out that like the songs on Legacy of Brutality were like re-recorded by Glenn playing guitar and bass and stuff without the other guys knowing about it. It's like, oh, okay, that's why I look at my hard drive and I have 5 different versions of the same Misfits songs. There's got to be a feeling at that time for you of like, okay, the wheels are turning, the stuff's happening, the business is noticing us, and then of course it turns out to be sort of just like a 1 record thing with them and 1 time for John on guitar before you meet up with Jay and start get working on the God of Thunder EP before the Geffen deal. I mean, how does that whole transition go for you?
Oh, that was really fucking exciting. That was some of the best moments of my life. And speaking of taking on things that we can't even comprehend, that was just complicated. I needed my van to have more power to lug the band and the gear up the hill. And I had a guy living in this. My mom had a rooming house. We always had these strange characters coming and going, drifters. And that's how I learned how to play drums from the first guy who got me my drum kit. He was in one of the rooms.
Nice.
Another room had this guy who claimed he went to that he was in Vietnam, but then we found out he never was. He's lying about it. But anyway, he's one who told me, he said, I can help you rebuild your engine and we can hot rod it.
Oh.
So you can have a lot of power and we'll be able to take care of it. And he showed me this Hot Rod magazine. And he's like, look, we just need this part, and this part, and this part. We rebuild the engine, and you'll have all the power, and you'll be able to go. And so I'm like, I'm all for it. Let's do it. And so he had me do the whole thing. I had to rip the whole fucking thing apart. It was so much work. Right in the middle of all this stuff going on with the band.
Yes.
Dealing with that. And that was like fucking weird, man, for me to just take on such a thing. But he was showing me the way.
Yeah.
Taught me how to be a mechanic. And, but it was really, really difficult to get him out of bed to help me. He'd be like, give him coffee and donuts. I'd have to constantly bring him coffee and donuts to get him moving.
Yeah.
But like, I had to freaking pull the engine block, the header off and take it into our room to scrape off the gasket. He's like, you got to clean every piece of that gasket off that engine block so we can put a new gasket on. And
I had to replace that gasket with my girlfriend's dad's help in high school once because I ran the 76 Nova he sold me. I ran it too long without getting the oil changed, and the headers got
you don't know how to explain this.
Started clicking and clacking because there wasn't enough oil to protect it.
Oh, damn.
So, not fun. Not fun when you're with the guy that sold you the car that's a mechanic and is just like, I can't believe you're dating my daughter.
Great story.
Oh, my God. This was a straight 6. I had to, we changed out the camshaft. We went with an Isky camshaft with higher lift and duration and dual point distributor. Switched to we got a dual point distributor and a 4-barrel carburetor. And
this is how you talk about cars. Accelerator
pedal and even steel braided hose. Changed all the hose with steel braided hoses. It was a beautiful looking engine block. And after we were done, it was only a straight 6, but it was a 300 Ford.
Notice how, by contrast, he knows what the fuck he's talking about.
Yeah. Anyway, that thing flew. That thing had so much power. And so we took that around the United States. And
see, that's a better story.
But in the middle of that freaking project, I had to go to Europe. We had a European tour.
Right.
And so he promised that he would help with my buddies to move the car across the street during street cleaning. But of course, he didn't do it once. So I came back with like 15 tickets on my car.
Yeah.
And now it's time for the next thing that happens next. That'll be before the next part after that. But maybe you go and you do a thing on the link on the description. Maybe you look at maybe not now, if you don't have to do it now. Check the links in the description to support the things Ivan is a part of. Everybody else has been doing what they've been doing. Ivan's been doing his thing. And there's links to that in the description, as well as links to other sources in this episode. And ways to support, like buying a Radish Mattress, or subscribing, telling a friend, leaving a review, doing the thing where you push the stars. Anything to help this weird damn podcast get to more people. There's not much time, people. We're all going to be at war with Mars pretty soon. But before that happens, let's go back to Jay Yuenger talking about the making of Astro Crew 2000. And I can see where it's going to start happening. It's coming up right now, any second now. Here it is.
An odd fact is that the previous LP, Los Exorcisto, is a digital album. Producer Andy Wallace had access to a Sony 48-track digital tape machine, which was a pretty big deal at that point. 48 tracks! You'll notice that I got really overdub happy on that album because I could, but fell out of favor soon afterward. The Sony 48-track digital tape machine was what fell out of favor soon afterward. Now, notice his comment there about those are played by real musicians who worked very, very hard, not like a computer sort of program or engineers that went and bleep, blop, blipped it, onto the tape from a hard drive. I think that that kind of would dovetail nicely with the comments from Rob about the recording of the album and the insistence on having everyone do things the way he wanted them to in the studio because he had a vision, ironically, of what he wanted to sound like in his head, and he had to keep reassuring them that, nope, this is going to sound good, this is going to sound good, and him saying that, as they started to hear the mixes, they understood why I was requesting that they do what they did over and over and over again. So I feel like the one comment supports the other, even though one comment might be a little more cranky about what the other comment is referring to. Like, they didn't want to make records that way. Rob did, and the result was fantastic. Obviously not sustainable for that crew to work that way anymore after Astro Creep 2000. Now back to the discussion of the plugging in the Phase 90. Here we go. Terry's assistant, Ulrich Wild, or Ulrich, however you say it, who's a genius with things like this, which is one of the reasons he's gone on to become a big shot producer himself, figured out that while hitting the foot switch on the pedal started the phase at any random point in its sweep, physically plugging the guitar cord into the pedal's input jack started the sweep from the exact same point every time. So what we had to do was Terry operated the tape machine. And Ulrich sat on the floor with the Phase 90 in hand and plugged the guitar cord into the pedal right before the part started at exactly the same time on both takes so that the phase effect would be in time with itself. A team effort which took all day to get right, but it sure was worth it. Now back to his listing of his gear, and then we'll talk about the gear in the studio. If you don't want to hear this, I'll blaze through it as fast as I can. Okay, back on the rack, there's an MXR flanger doubler. Notice in the top photo, which is later than the lower one, I've covered up both MXR rack mount units with my black tape. I did this because people were always sniffing around trying to figure out how I got my sound, and that's, of course, ironic because I 100% stole the flanger doubler idea from Daryl from Pantera, and he didn't care at all. Thought it was funny. Next, there's a bunch of Rocktron stuff. IntelliFlex, guitar silencer, noise gates, Rocktron Bradshaw, switching system. You can see the foot controller of the switching system on top of the rack. Both photos. The only pedal I had out on stage was my Dunlop 535Q wah. God, I hate that thing. Jesus, that's me, not him saying that. Although later I replaced that with a Dunlop remote wah. My guitar tech usually operated the pedals in the drawer and the big stereo delays from the IntelliFlex and channel switching by hand with a foot controller. If you look at live footage from the period, you see me stomping around a lot. Some of that was just stomping, rawr, but a lot of time it was actually me signaling for a switch to be hit. Another backwards-ass thing I used to do was with the Tube Screamer, I did use it as my a little more boost pedal for solos, as is commonly done. That's the great thing about that pedal. It doesn't sound like you've actually stepped on a pedal when you turn it on. But I used a lot of controlled feedback in my playing and would set the Screamer to overpower the noise gates, which were necessary to make rhythm work sound tight through a massive gain amp setup. Let's move on to the amps in the middle. 2 Mesa Boogie triple rectifiers and 2 Randall Century 200s, each head feeding 2 Mesa standard rectifier cabs. So that's 4 stacks. 2 for each side of the stage in stereo. Sean had an SVT 8x10 cab on each side of the drums as well. So we were, loud, and we could hear everything wherever we were on stage. The idea behind that particular setup is that, yes, I was quite influenced by Daryl's setup, feeding the flanger doubler into the Randalls, and I wanted to use aspects of that sound. It's a really weird sound when you think about it, but not have it sound exactly like Pantera, so I started running the Randalls through the Mesa cabs instead of the Randall Jaguar loaded cabs, which I liked a lot. Which resulted in a very different but very cool sound, and I started running the more normal-sounding triple Rex alongside the Randalls, although set to silicone diode, not tube. The setup in the studio for Astro Creep was very different. A little different. I wasn't carrying a camera around at that point, and to my knowledge, there aren't any photos of what was going on, but it was too bad. The setup for the album was the rack gear you see in the photos that we just talked about. And 4 half stacks, a Randall Century 200 through a Randall Jaguar cabinet, a Century 200 head through a Mesa cabinet, a Mesa triple rectifier through a Mesa cabinet, and a Marshall valve state. I was in love with that crazy transistor metal sound that Tommy from Prong had. Through, I don't remember, either a Randall or a Mesa. These were all going at once, but each cab was mic'd with only a single Shure SM57, and there were 4 signals summed in the console and sent to 1 track on tape. I was determined to achieve the sound I had in my head, and I was quite picky and a little bratty about the tones we were getting. There was quite a bit of moving mics around, and I made Terry and Ulrich do quite a lot of radical EQing. I didn't understand much about recording at this point, so I didn't grasp that the general practice when recording most sound sources, especially electric guitars, is to use EQ as little as possible, so as to leave room for EQing if it needs to be done during mixdown. And that it's a point of pride with recording engineers to attain a desired sound by selecting the proper microphones and positioning them correctly, which is a big deal because when a mic is jammed right up on a speaker's cone, moving it just half an inch can change the sound drastically. Not that I would have given a fuck if I had understood any of that at the time. I was making a big budget major label album, and I knew that this might be the one and only time in my life that a major corporation would pay me to work at one of the best recording studios in the world with the best engineers and keep paying for it until it was done. My mantra was, there is no reason for this not to be perfect. Later, when I dropped in at the mix sessions for the Deftones Around the Fur album, Terry played me a track and said, "Hear that? That guitar has no EQ on it." And it did sound really good. And I just smiled and thought, well, who cares? My record's awesome. That's a very good feeling.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, John Ritchie was a great guitar player. That was when the band started really turning the early stages when we actually became metal.
Yeah.
You know, introduced the double bass grooves to the band. And he was very different from the other guys.
Sure.
And then Jay Yuenger joined the band. But the recording with Make Them Die Slowly with John Ritchie was an interesting project. We got Bill Laswell to produce the record, but we had the whole thing recorded and done with another, I think it was Martin Bisi Studios. Martin Bisi did it, and Make Them Die Slowly was already done. But when Bill Laswell came aboard, he wanted to do the record, and we decided to re-record it with him.
Okay.
By the time we got to him, pretty much every song changed. we rewrote every song, and some of the songs were dropped. You know, we just decided to move forward with. I'm not sure if we even had those tapes or if we recorded over them. No, we didn't record over them with.
Oh, interesting.
I'm not sure.
Somewhere,
but
there could be an alternate version of Make Them Die Slowly out there that people haven't heard.
All the songs, yeah. I think I have all of the rough mixes from that album, but
Make Them Die Slowly.
Yeah.
Personally, man, I bought that after I heard Los Exorcisto, so I really enjoyed the songwriting on it and the playing on it, but I kind of lamented, like, God, if they could have had the production of Los Exorcisto on this, I bet people would have been.
Oh, God, tell me about it. I know. Well, I don't know what the fuck happened. I feel like he accidentally left the reverb all the way to max on the whole entire mix.
Yes.
Something was washed out and fucked up about it.
And it was, and the vocal was very, very loud in every mix, and it wasn't layered, you know, so it just sounds like Rob just caterwauling, you know, at a certain level in the mix that doesn't really do him any favors either. But, you know,
I know
he doesn't have the power and the presence that would come with the next two records. Obviously, it doesn't hurt to have Terry Date and Andy Wallace, you know, taking care of that kind of a thing. If I'm remembering
exactly,
guys.
Yeah.
I was gonna also ask about that trip to Europe. Is this the one where you spent your per diem money on a pair of leather pants?
Oh yeah. I fucking was eating out of a jar of peanut butter because I put all my money into those leather pants.
Shauna wrote in her book that it was a thing that, like, they kind of made fun of you for, but then it turned out that that because she and Rob were staunch vegetarians, all they could eat on that tour was just the bread or the rice portion of whatever meals you guys were getting. So you would get, like, the beef or the Polish dog or the whatever the meat part of their food was anyway, you know.
I think that might be true. I just remember that fucking peanut butter. I can't even eat. Every time I taste peanut butter, I remember, like, it brings me back. But yeah. I mean, they were vegetarians, and I think I do remember just sitting at the end of the table, you know, like eyeballing. I'm like, "Are you gonna eat that? I know you're not gonna eat that. I know you're not gonna."
Come on, just let's drop the facade here. Let's cut to the chase, for crying out loud. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know you're looking at my leather pants, but I'm keeping these. Just give me that dog. You got.
And a hearty welcome to our drive-in theater. We have a wonderful evening's entertainment lined up for you, one that will provide several hours of pleasurable relaxation and diversion for you and your family. Did you fail to dress up for tonight's show? No tie, an old shirt and slacks, a house dress? Well, don't give it a thought. We're glad you came as you are. We just want you to enjoy yourselves.
Now back to the movie. Rhodes, in his commentary, makes a great point about the film having a much more blatant fairy tale structure to the story compared to the very contemporary science fiction style horror or other films that were coming soon after it in the horror genre. Legendre is like an evil wizard to me, or a devil. He's got a vulture as his familiar, in this. It is very, very blatant. When Neil falls ill and has to be tended to and advised by a wise older man, it's Dr. Brunner. But it's almost like, the wise old wizard in a way in some of the fairy tales, but it's also akin to a Van Helsing sort of role in Dracula, too. There's also elements in this that make me think it might be one of the earlier examples of body horror in American film. There is a scene where the audience gets to see Beaumont turning into a zombie slowly and losing physical control of his himself. Many viewers at the time probably had in their recent memories awareness of or direct experience with the flu epidemic of 1918. And the zombie transformation of Beaumont can be easily interpreted as a display of some familiar physical symptoms of encephalitis lethargica, which was common from people that were struck by that flu epidemic and were not able to sort of, recover easily. Also around this time, there was a novel called Trilby by someone named du Maurier. This was then adapted in 1931, so the year before this movie, into the film Svengali, starring John Barrymore. Yes, of those Barrymores. The story involves a nefarious individual using his mind control over an innocent woman to, I guess, sexually or romantically dominate her. And White Zombie borrows imagery in a figurative sense from that novel, and it borrows imagery literally from that film with the use of the floating eyes of Bela Lugosi piercing into the audience to indicate there's mind control at work. Also, there was a play called Zombie in 1932 that died a death at the box office and did nothing for the horror genre or the zombie story genre, but that didn't stop the writers of it from crying about, this new film supposedly being a ripoff of their ideas. Didn't go well. It didn't really track, I guess. It wasn't really relevant enough. And of all the actors in the film, Bela was the only one that did well or did better in his career after it came out. Not that the movie was so bad. It just wasn't, like I said, it was very successful as far as profit goes and entertaining a lot of people. A lot of stuffy New York critics didn't like it, but it was just the fact that many of the members of the cast were not spring chickens anymore, and they were familiar to audiences of stage and silent films. So this was sort of the last shot they had to make a real big splash or a transition into the talkies, as they say, and become a star for like the second time, or solidify their place in a industry that's probably overflowing, I assume, with lots of younger, more energetic actors that are a lot more, disposed to taking advantage of the medium in a very energetic kind of way, but with a how do I say this? With less overacting, less physical stagecraft overacting that these actors were used to. They were younger actors that figured out, and directors that figured out, how to craft physical portrayals of their characters, intentions and emotions and actions for a camera lens, not for a live audience. And I just realized I'm making sweeping arm gestures right now that you can't see and that are not helpful to you. And for that, I do not apologize. One of my favorite bits towards the end of the movie is Bela does a smoke bomb. It's a joke now. It's like, throw down a smoke bomb and run away. And then there's like a comedic moment where the person is like caught nearby, hiding behind something. Like, damn it, didn't work. It's an old magician's trick, right? Well, in this case, like I think you just see Bela Lugosi like throw something at the ground and smoke comes up. But he's an alchemist. He's got all kinds of weird potions and powders and crap. And so it's another one of those like, whoa, is he magic or is he just using chemicals? And is he using the chemicals to enhance his magic? It's never made all that perfectly clear, which I freaking love. The combination of implied magic and alchemical science. That's how it's done for people like me. More chemicals and weird sacrificial themes and less pink lightning springing from a character's hands in a seemingly unlimited capacity. I'm looking at you, Star Wars, and to a lesser extent, Harry Potter or whatever. Like, I know in Harry Potter they have spells that have ingredients and crap, but a lot of it's, to me, after a while, like towards the end especially, it's like you just have your wand and you just yell the thing and you get to do that whole G.I. Joe Transformers laser blast thing against the other guy's laser blast, and they hit in the middle, and it's like you got. I mean, the Ghostbusters had proton packs that like ran out of fuel at some point; they had to be recharged. That's what I want from my magic in stories. I want not realistic explanations, just rules, like horror in general. Why is it happening? What are the limitations of it? Because if you got a character that can just do whatever with all the magic and it's never ending, it's not exciting or fun, and there's no tension. That's why I dig some of the more like the Conan, Robert E. Howard kind of approach to a lot of the magic is done by evil characters that are degenerates, or they worship strange gods and they get their powers from sacrifice. And there's got the price has to be paid. They can't just like make themselves grow really big and shoot lasers out of their eyes or whatever whenever they want to. So I like that. I like there being ritual involved and chemical ingredients that are a factor. I don't, it makes me wonder, like, all these zombies can't just be drugged or paralyzed by chemicals to do what he wants, right? There has to be some kind of hypnotic power in his eyes and his hands that's not fully explainable to us. I say that's what my interpretation of it. So he's got either some inherent quality about him that leads him to be powerful in the dark voodoo arts, more so than any white man. That's, of course, it's an exceptional white man that's come to Haiti, and he's better at voodoo than all the black natives for some reason. What are you gonna do? I don't need scholars to bloviating about how this is a movie that hasn't aged very well because of the racial themes and the use of, there's a few actors that were Anglo men in blackface, and okay, it's not great. It's not good. It sucks that's how films were made back then and didn't just employ more black people. That sucks. But I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna go to bed crying over that. The damn movie's almost 100 years old. Now, while I was watching the movie and taking notes this time, something popped into my head about Sean and her book. And instead of going to another segment, I'm just gonna get it out here, because that's everything I had to say about the film for the rest of the episode. Her book is so noble and diplomatic and as fair as it could be to the other people that enhanced her experiences. She never stoops to any obsession with settling scores or tawdry details about her and Rob's relationship, or her and any of the guys she mentions, like Al Jurgensen, Dave Windorf, or, she talks a little bit about relationships that didn't go very well, but that they followed a pattern. The same thing happened every time. And it wasn't really until she got off the road and really settled in one place that she had a long-term relationship and married the guy that she's been with ever since and has been really happy. It's, she could have done a lot if she wanted that was petty, or at the very least, kind of tawdry and lascivious and very enticing for people that want to know what's it like, to have a long-term relationship with Rob Zombie, or to have a long-term relationship with her. Anyone in a relationship for that many years, especially from that age when you're so young, has bad stories about personality clashes and being treated poorly at times. Everybody does, even if it's not a particularly tumultuous relationship or a contentious one. I never had a really contentious relationship with anybody for very long. Myself, I always end them pretty quick if they get contentious. So the long-term ones I've had have been rewarding, but no contention. Maybe that's the problem. Not enough content for contention and contentiousness. But I have plenty of memories of times that I felt slighted or mistreated by someone I loved and that loved me and treated me really, really well. I mean, overall, day to day, everybody slips. Everybody has bad days. She could have easily taken any one of those many, many misunderstandings, fights, bad days, hurt feelings, bad sexual adventures. I'm sure that all young people have whether they're with one person for, that many years in a row or multiple people over the course of their 20s and 30s. But Sean's too kind and too classy for that. The only time she really brings up things is like, hey, this is, as we've talked about, this is where the relationship ended and at what time. And when it affected the rest of the band, when, she's got a gripe about Rob's new girlfriend, and because the whole band does, because they don't want to have her around. And Rob's not nice to be with when she's around him. As I think she said, or Jay said, and other people have said as well. She could have dredged up stories of like, Rob liked it when I looked like this, or wore my makeup this way, or I tried to please him by being more like certain other women that he knew that he thought were hot, or he didn't respond the way I wanted to my new hairstyle this one time, or he was really shitty to me for no reason on the set of this video. Nope, none of that. Just the basics. She has too many things that were fun and super creative to focus on instead. Things she cares about and was having wild experiences with other really creative people. That's way better, in my opinion, to read about. And I left that in here with this part about the movie because the thoughts came to me while I was watching the movie. And if you haven't experienced this, or if you haven't clocked it or registered it in your life, I would beseech you to think about your creative process. If you're into this stuff that I'm talking about, whether it's music or movies or other kinds of art, you are a creative person. If you care enough to listen to all the things, the details that I get into, you are a creator of some kind. And you've probably taken in a certain kind of art or creativity from other people up to the point where you finally keep catching yourself going, I keep thinking about how I would do this, or how I would want to portray myself in that situation, or how I would have written that or staged that or recorded that or played that part. And eventually, hopefully, you give in to that voice and you start doing it for yourself, and you start learning how to best communicate what you want. That's something to be grateful for, but you can't expect it to always, always, always just come out of nowhere. And I don't think it usually does. One tactic I have used that I learned from other people was to focus on something for a long time if your energy feels like it's going in the right direction. But once you hit a stopping point and you're out of ideas, run away from it for a while. Put on something entertaining or lighthearted or funny that'll make you emotionally relax and mentally stop overthinking something. Or go for a walk outside somewhere nice. Go see something, go to an art museum or whatever you can do. Get some exercise, get on a bike or get in the gym. And during those times you're not focused, when you're being entertained by something else, these natural thoughts arise that probably have been bubbling under the surface, but they've been pressed down by your active thinking. And these other ideas have been sort of squished, and they didn't have a way to get up to your conscious mind and tell you what they want to tell you. And that's what happened while I was watching the movie. And just that I spent so much time with my nose in Sean's book. you know, that I didn't realize taking a less active approach to it would yield this little, not a revelation, but a little summary, a very natural impression and a summary at the end.
Don't forget to visit our refreshment center during the intermission or any time. You love the tasty array of snacks we have to offer. So will the youngsters. Everything is quality and so good.
There were some fucking scary moments on that tour. I mean, we would end up lost and on a weird fucking, like, Yugoslavia was going through a revolution.
Right.
And we were hitting some spots that we just felt in danger and had to turn around. Like, we couldn't, like, you know, we had to terminate the journey to that venue, or there would be something going on. I remember having to pay off some police in certain countries. We would be like, I had to negotiate, and you know, they wanted to just get their fucking whatever money they can get out of us, so we can keep going.
Yeah.
And our tour manager was like, just said, give him this, give him this, give him this, just give him this. And we just handed over to him. He's like, okay, go.
Right.
You know,
this was a tour manager that was from Europe, right? This was not a...
Yeah, the Netherlands. I was the only one who had to drive stick shift in the band.
Oh,
so
no.
So I had to do all the driving that the tour manager didn't want to do. and the tour manager, you know, was just always put me behind the wheel, and I enjoyed it because I got to see Europe. The best way to learn about what a country is drive through it, you know? Walk through it, drive through it. And so I'm like going through all these fucking mountains and tunnels, and, you know, between different countries, I'd be like, this is unbelievable. The most beautiful, you know, landscapes, and then going to those with the eastern part of Europe, where it's more getting to more of the communist areas. I think it was like I know towards like Yugoslavia, we were getting close to. I know in Eastern Germany.
Yeah, isn't it funny to?
I can't remember.
It's funny to remember that. You had to say East or West Germany, because that was a thing. You know, I forget sometimes how it wasn't that long ago that we had in East and West Germany.
Berlin Wall. Yeah, the Berlin Wall. And guess what? We were there right when that fucking wall came down.
Oh, no kidding. So you're like, like 89, I guess, somewhere in there.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember grabbing a piece of the wall.
Yeah.
And then they told me that I better not touch that because it's got asbestos in it.
Gotcha.
I kept it anyway, and I think it disintegrated in my luggage. I got along with the tour manager better than anyone in the band because he liked the Scorpions, and Sean and Rob hated the Scorpions, and I.
So you guys obviously go into the, God of Thunder era. Well, if we put our friend on the cover dressed like Gene Simmons, maybe Kiss will notice and try to sue us, and we'll get some notoriety. And
that's exactly what happened.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what happened.
Awesome.
Fucking A, huh?
Yeah.
That was my buddy I grew up with in Brooklyn.
Nice.
Greg Skorka. He was my drum tech with the White Zombie from day one all the way to the end.
No
Even after I left the band, he went on a short run with them. And so he was a very, very important part of the success of White Zombie, because he would give his blood, sweat, and tears for the band.
So, last episode, I took a little time to be frustrated and disappointed by Joel McIver's Sinister Urge book. I'm going to jump back into it, though. I'm going to kind of pick up where we left off talking about the Pee Wee Herman stuff, the Pee Wee's Playhouse work Rob was doing. Then the release of Soul Crusher comes after that. There's a quote from Rob Zombie that came from Cream Presents Thrash Metal, which came out not long after Soul Crusher was released. We just got called a noise band because we had such shitty equipment, he protested. It was like playing through cheap stereo speakers. It's so funny because in New York, no one will admit they're a noise band, even those who know they are. But when you get out of the city, everyone's dying to be called a noise band. They all think it's this really swinging scene. It says, the album's influence ran deep for an indie release. None other than Kurt Cobain of Nirvana included Rat Mouth in a list of his favorite songs in his diary, published posthumously in 2002 as journals. The press gave it a cautious thumbs up for the most part, especially in the United Kingdom, where the weekly music magazines seemed keenly attuned to American rock of the alternative persuasion. It was this focus that led them to give Nirvana so much attention in the early 1990s. One notable review came from the UK's Melody Maker, for whom David Stubbs wrote, White Zombie's hallmark is a rather neat, hollowed-out psychedelic guitar noise that cuts diagonal swaths through the thrash-scape, like the wind rustling through a kitchen. I'm reminded once again that if White Zombie were British, they would be writing overrated football chants for the edification of journalists of other music papers, before being consigned to obscurity after a 3-week rock life of urinating for the benefit of paparazzi photographers and chasing bimbos round leagues. But there still is a pocket of soiled but unspoiled air in America, where a certain kind of thrash moronicism can sustain its good name. This is more Jackson Pollock than Vomit Stain, and let's have more. Now, it notes it's around this time Tom 5 gets replaced on guitar by John Ricci, and then Iggy Pop had mentioned the album as one of his favorites of 1988 in the Readers and Critics poll for Rolling Stone that year. They book a bunch of live dates whenever they can get time off of work to do it, which for Sean and Rob means graphic design. The text says, at the cheesier end of the magazine publishing industry. So Sean says, I've been in school for photography and design, and I've been working 3 jobs at the same time to get by. I worked in a Xerox store where we did photo reproduction. I would sneak a lot of record artwork and flyers in there and get it done for free. But when I graduated, I went out and took the first job I was offered because I had purple and black dreadlocks, and I didn't think anyone was going to hire me. So I walk into this place, and it's a nice design studio, and the woman liked my portfolio. Then she said, this is all really good, but this is what we do here. And she leaned down and picked up a huge stack of porno mags and dropped them in front of me. I started laughing. She said, you're not offended? I said, no, I guess not. And I got the job. This is before computers, so I spent all day on these huge mat boards, drawing key lines and laying out type and drawing boxes for photos. The only thing that was kind of gross was that I'd have to look at photos for half a second to see if they were portrait or landscape shaped, so I'd know how to lay them out. It was definitely not my thing, man. I am so not into porn. But it was a job, and my boss was super cool. I started off at a little above minimum wage, but she kept giving me pretty good raises, so I was doing all right, and I could pay the rent. And it was all softcore stuff. I don't think I could have handled it if it was hardcore. There was a magazine called Velvet, I think, and another one called Cinema Blue, which had pictures in it of actresses taking their shirts off in films. They were the kind of stupid celebrity magazines which they had before the internet. The funniest part is that after I'd done what I did, which was key line the photos, she needed somebody to tape the photos up on the wall, project the photos, and sketch the image on there by tracing the photo. She hired Rob to do that, and he did a great job. He did googly eyes on them, and it was hilarious. That was really funny. I always have been really quiet about that job because it was a bit embarrassing, but it was a good studio. We had lots of laughs there. Zombie laughed when I asked if he was required to utilize any serious art skills on the porno magazines. Nah, I just had to make sure everything was straight. He said nobody was really concerned with it looking pleasing. I just had to make sure the spread pussy shots didn't end up where the staples were. It was a great job because I made good money. That was the last job I ever had. So a little time goes by. Jay joins the band to replace John Ricci after they made complete Make Them Die Slowly. There's some quotes from Rob here about life during that time and, you know, how White Zombie fits into the sort of local scene again. He says, well, we were kind of outcasts. We were definitely in our own world. I mean, I didn't even know what was going on in the world. We know we were, like, living on the Lower East Side. Everything the band appeared to be was exactly what it was. Nothing was fake. We were all living on the Lower East Side. I don't know why that's repeated. Everybody was flat broke. No one had any money. You know, sometimes we would eat the free Hare Krishna food in the parks that they would feed to homeless people to survive. It was like a band of bums. When asked if any other bands had made an impact on Zombie, he says, I didn't even have a television. I didn't know what was going on in the world. You could mention the #1 record to me, and I would have had no idea who it was. We were so far off the map. It was like our whole existence was Lower East Side, CBGBs, that world. That's what came out of totally not comprehending what was going on, which is a good thing. I mean, it was what let the band become the band that it was going to be, because we put no restrictions on it, because we weren't aware that there were restrictions, you know. We didn't know how things were supposed to be done, and we didn't give a shit, basically. Later in the book, I see a huge chunk from the Pulse magazine article that we've already gone over, which is kind of nice. For me, for my ego, as much as I'm criticizing Joel McIver's approach to writing and editing, I think it's I'll take that as a compliment that I was on the right track by using that article in my own research. I mean, not a lot of hard details that make for a good narrative for more than a sentence at a time for the next couple of years that he covers. I would say, again, this is a book worth checking out if you can get it on the cheap, as it is the only thing close to an authoritative account of Rob Zombie's career up till current day. But then I see the Craig Kilborn episode being discussed. So let's check my memory. Let's see how well I did remembering what I said just a little while ago. There's some quotes here. Craig Kilborn asked Rob Zombie if the ever divisive creative differences had played a part in the band's divergence. He says, we toured for almost 4 years without speaking to each other. Right when we couldn't stand each other anymore, the money started coming in. So it was like, I'll do anything to hang on to this thing. I think they just hated me. I don't know what it was. I forget, but it didn't end good. There was a conference call of sorts to confirm the band's demise, and then that was it. They hadn't spoken since. You were the leader of the group, right? I think that's where the hatred came from, Zombie replied, because they didn't see it that way. The host then asked if he received a bigger share of White Zombie's income as the leader. He said, well, that's where the end came about. When you start your band in high school, you're like, let's share this evenly. Let's even give the drummer a fourth because he's a good guy. You come to the realization after a while, like, why is this guy making $1 million? And in parentheses, the text says, note that he wasn't referring to latter-day White Zombie drummer John Tempesta, who would remain a regular collaborator for some time after the band's split. He says, I definitely feel grateful that we got big when we did. This is a quote from Sean. We were so lucky with the timing. When we broke up in 1996, it was right when the record industry was starting to collapse. There was no downloading when we were popular, so people bought our records. It was incredible. It was later emerged that White Zombie's management had asked Sean and Jay Yuenger to consider continuing the band with a new singer, but the idea did not appeal to either of them. In any case, perhaps that time wasn't right to start a new band, not when the music industry was about to receive a near terminal shock. A file-sharing service called Napster went live in June of 1999, etc. Etc. Yeah, you know. Goes on to mention Rob's involvement with Beavis and Butthead Do America, having animated the hallucination sequence in that. I saw that movie twice in the theaters just for that scene alone, so I could watch it again. And the fact that that was sort of like their last White Zombie song release, I believe. If it wasn't that, you know, it was Rat Fink's Suicide Tanks and Cannibal Girls. If that's not the last thing they put out, then I would say it might have been I'm Your Boogeyman. You know, that the cover that they did for, I was on a movie soundtrack, right? What the heck was it? There was like 4 movie soundtracks I bought simply because White Zombie had one song on them. There was the one for Escape from LA There was the Beavis and Butthead Do America soundtrack. Then there was Beavis and Butthead Experience that came before that, which had I Am Hell on it. But I'm Your Boogeyman was maybe The Crow Part 2. Was what that? Yeah, I think that's what that was. City of Angels. If you'd like to know more about The Crow, please scroll back through the feed here at A History of Rock and Roll and Film and Rock and Roll and check out my 3 episodes. They mostly revolve around Nine Inch Nails, but they also include quite a bit about Joy Division on the first episode. And we cover the entire sort of history and creation of the comic book, and then the creation of the film, and then the adaptation issues that they went through, the rewrites, different experiences between the certain factions of the filmmaking staff at various points, and the inevitable horror that ends that story, unfortunately, for Brandon Lee. And if you also want to, help support and spread the word about the show, and why wouldn't you, please throw a link to one of your friends if you find a movie or a band that they're into that I've covered. It's me in my goddamn living room with my goddamn guitar and microphone that's doing all this. I don't want to misrepresent the powerful force that is behind this show as being anything.
Don't ruin the magic and the mystery
ratty
of showbiz.
And desperate and independent as it is. Thank you for giving a damn about a show that's so weird. I'm not covering anything that's sort of fueled by current events.
We noticed.
Or entertainment, current events, or entertainment events past.
We've been here.
It's just like a history podcast, but not for people that like history, for people that like rock and movies. But it's also not enough of a movie podcast, I don't think, to satisfy the average podcast listening cinephile.
Did you just call them perverts?
So whoever you are listening, you are a very rare breed and a very special chunk of the civilization, I would say, to find this so interesting. And that is why I know my efforts are not wasted, because someone is listening to this. By the way, if you know of any other podcasts that have guests on that I should check out and reach out to in order to become a guest, send them my way. justtheworstever@gmail.com or on Instagram at justtheworstever. All these details are in the description of the episode.
It's almost like you figured out quickly that no one's going to ever email an address with the name of this podcast in it, because it's too long and stupid and complicated to do that.
We hope you'll make this a weekly visit. Bring the family.
No.
Bring your friends.
No.
There are always wonderful new pictures to see, delightful snacks to nibble, a gay, pleasant evening for all.
Oh, well, if you can guarantee that, then maybe. Can I bring my Radish mattress to the drive-in?
Yeah, Sean and Rob were always the nucleus, because they kind of put the band together from day one, and being that they're older, I was like right with them from the beginning. So every guitar player that came and went always felt like the three of us were the real band, and they would just be, dispensable or something.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, it's like, how can they not help feel that way? And but we always included them as much as we could. So Jay was more like the loner type. He would always go off on his own.
Yeah. And
I would always hang out with Shauna, and Rob would just want to be on his own too. Mm-hmm. But Shauna and Rob, as you probably already know, have been dating since the beginning.
Right.
And so, I always, from the very beginning, Rob always had that one edge over me, I guess I could say, because I joined the band and he's 4 years older than me, and would like just you know, brush off my thoughts or whatever, just like I don't know. He always made me feel a little bit less than him.
Yeah.
But then then we got a little tighter when he finally found an appreciation and a love for Metallica. When he got into metal, we were like buddy for a little bit there.
Oh.
We even joined the gym together. We used to work out. We'd go to the World Gym and got a trainer, and that was like, while we were writing songs for the Sexorcisto, he and I would bulk up.
Nice.
You know, just get healthy. And let me tell you, when we watched Biohazard on stage,
Yeah.
we knew that we need to have that endurance to be able to run back and forth on that stage, because the stages were getting bigger.
Right.
And you want to move back and forth fast and make it, you know, get excited. You know, you want the crowd to be jumping up and down.
Yep.
And you got to be moving around too. You can't just stand there looking lazy.
Yeah.
And so he realized he would get out of breath too much. And I think he forgot the value of what we learned back then, because he got so much better, but then I could see he's getting out of breath again later on stage. Anyway,
I gotta tell you, as a teenager buying bootlegs, I heard that. I absolutely heard that from the live shows.
Yeah.
He would be huffing and puffing because it's a direct recording from the board, so it's not doing him any favors anyways. I mean, those are unfair. But he's like, and then he would just go, God, it's hot as fuck in here on the microphone. Like, I remember there's one, it starts out with the drums, and his voice comes in. He's like, well, it's going to be a long fucking horrible night. Jesus Christ, it's hot in this place.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, you're running around with a leather jacket and a leather hat on, or a stocking cap on anyway. Like, I don't know what to tell you, buddy. Like,
yeah.
That's why those guys in Biohazard, those guys in Biohazard are wearing those fucking tank tops.
I know, and so we would purposefully, you know, just be like, we're gonna do 40 minutes on the treadmill right now, and on the Stairmaster, you know, and then we would play shows, and he'd be like, oh man, I could run around all day long and not get out of breath. I'm like, well, there we go, well, anyway, so after that, you know, we ended up finishing the album, and we moved out to LA, and then we went on tour.
Yeah, and you get your biceps and triceps looking good. It was good. You got to go share the stage with Danzig. You know, you might as well look like you belong there. Those guys were clearly doing those guys were clearly doing their push-ups and sit-ups at the time.
Oh fuck yeah! Oh fuck yeah!
There's a long discussion about workouts and exercise and health here. We can jump past it.
In favor of the next part.
It's such a healthy, you know, being able to be creative, and doing what we are good at is keeps us healthy and young. You know, it's so important to remember that. And
it's always, the evidence is always there when you're engaged in those kind of activities. And if you get out of practice, it can be very, very seductive to let those skills atrophy. If you know,
tell me about it.
It's scary how much it can be intimidating to kind of go back to a certain element of your lifestyle if you haven't done it in a while. I was going to ask, when it comes to that, when it comes to bands that, or like good eras in your life, you know, of playing with other bands and stuff. And it could be from anything. This could be White Zombie or post White Zombie or whatever. Cause you guys were perpetually stylistically on the outside of every scene, it seemed like. And I was wondering, where did you feel the most at home? Like what kind of bands that you toured with, or what era of White Zombie made you feel like you found your spot? You know, was it scary to not be able to slide into a genre, you know, and just be like, we're like these guys, you know, we're like New York, because you're not New York hardcore, and you're not, you know, thrash metal per se, you know, and you're not an art school band anymore either.
Well, to be honest, White Zombie was the project that the Sexorcisto album.
Yeah,
I felt was the masterpiece. That was the pinnacle.
Yep.
Of my songwriting, and stylistically and everything. I felt like this is it.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah.
And it was such a shame that we just threw it away, because I feel like during the tour, listening to Rob Zombie talking about the next record and everything, how he wants to change everything he was like listening to Ministry and Nine Inch Nails and just wants to go so industrial and I was listening to Sepultura.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go more tribal, the other direction.
Right.
And so I was like, no. But, that was one little, moment that was like, okay, Rob just changes so much.
The bubble had burst. It sounds like it was kind of Did you feel okay about where you left things with the other band members? I honestly don't know if your exit was like, it was where you kind of, I don't know if you were pushed towards the door or if you voluntarily went, I need to maintain my own, well-being here mentally, and it's not going to continue if I stay in this band. If as much of that as you want to, let me in on, obviously it could be very personal, and I don't want to tread anywhere that's not comfortable for you. But
I think it was a combination of both, because I could not tolerate being in the presence of Rob Zombie any longer. He reached a point where I just hated him. And everything that would come out of his mouth and his behavior and was just unacceptable. And I just reached a point where I said, I'm quitting, and I walked. Yeah.
I know that, when Astro Creep came out, I read, I was a junior in high school, and I read every guitar magazine I could get my hands on that had Jay on the cover of it. And he talked about the fact, he and Sean both said that, the studio sessions for that record were basically just arguing from dawn until dusk and then coming back and seeing what was, salvageable from the previous day's work. And it was just, like it was a matter of fact. And the interviewer was very shocked, and they're like, yeah, that's just how things work in this band. It's just like, God, that sucks. Like, that sounds terrible. But
recording, I didn't find us arguing during the recording.
Well, this was the album, to be clear, this is from Astro Creep after you'd left. So even with you not there, things evidently got worse anyway. So you might have had.
That's what. Yeah. That kind of told me I fucking dodged a bullet. She said it was so. Things were so awful.
Yeah. Now, I can't stress enough that this is a thing Ivan did just out of charity, basically, and the goodness of his heart with me. He didn't know me. I got, nothing going on that will make him any money for doing this or boost his following extensively. I hope it does. I want it to. But he didn't know me shit. He just got back to someone who was interested in asking him some questions about his life and his career. And I'm grateful to him for that, and I hope I can pay it forward somehow. I don't know. The attention you give people, it's really valuable. It is worth something in and of itself with no real monetary payoff in mind, So.
Oh, hi. Is he gone? Is he gone? Okay, spring the music back up. Yeah, hi, this is your local neighborhood representative of the Radish Mattress family and community. It is a community, and we want you to be part of our Radish Mattress community. So sign up for daily emails from us and become a brand soldier in the war against non-radish-oriented mattresses in the universe. It's very simple. You just go to the website and you sign up, and then you scan a fingerprint and your eyeball retina thing, convert that into a PDF, convert that then into a JPEG, and then put that on a piece of paper you've printed out and mail it to the head office of Radish Mattress / Bootleg Ayahuasca Incorporated in Canton, Ohio. Couldn't be simpler. Pledge your allegiance to Radish Mattress, and let's give the whole world a better night's sleep, whether they like it or not.
Okay, more Jay talk from his writings about the recording of Los Exorcisto. I think there was a part in the previous episode, or either that or earlier in this episode, where he was basically setting up a, when was the time you feel like you made it kind of question. And he was basically answering that in sort of a long-form story about life in New York. And I'm continuing from there. In retrospect, getting signed, which was something everyone we knew wanted, and being in a studio up in the sky with a famous music industry veteran producer, actually I should say semi-famous. The very next job Andy Wallace did was to mix Nirvana's Nevermind, which is what made him famous. Who was treating me very well and taking my ideas seriously was, for me, a much bigger leap from the year and a half leading up to that time than anything. Platinum records, playing arenas, whatever. That happened after. Even today, it would probably not be a wise move to take the subway from Times Square to Brooklyn at 3 in the morning. And again, even today, that's being written from 08, 09, before the 2010s kicked in. And I'm not saying that contradicts any, that's just context I'm putting out there. So, he's not saying that in 2023, because I don't know what it's like to ride the subway at 3 in the morning from Times Square to Brooklyn in 2023 or in 2010 or in 1992. But that's just putting his perspective all together there. So anyway, he says this is pretty much suicidal and unavoidable for him because he worked very long days when he was recording guitar tracks, like noon to 2 a.m. Listen to the record. It has a bit of guitar on it. And I liked being in the studio so much that I would hang out all day when somebody else was tracking. I was at some point during writing this stuff down, going to go into exhaustive detail about how the album was recorded on a Sony PCM3348 48-track digital machine, and then I remembered that absolutely nobody gives a shit about that. Suffice to say, there was a lot of tracks, and I was able to do as many guitar overdubs as I wanted. Sometimes Sean was in the control room with me, egging me on. Now do another part, a minor third above the one you just did. We had a lot of fun with that. I should also mention that Andy had been in bands and was a very musical person. You might say, well, duh, but many record producers approach the work in a way that is more technical than artistic. And I have worked with studio people who have never played music. So what I was going to say is that Andy knew the lingo, had some good guitar ideas, and helped us arrange some of the songs. Then he says, again, I remember it as being hot. These rides home seem like summer in my memory, and there was that out-of-control, dangerous feeling that summer in the city brought then. A couple of nights I thought, great, guitarist killed while recording debut album. One night there was a gang of kids working their way towards me, fucking with people, trying to snatch purses, etc. I stuck out like a sore thumb in any situation, but at that time, on a Brooklyn-bound train, I really stuck out. They were moving slowly, but they had their eyes on me the whole time. By the way, I'll pause again. 1992 Brooklyn is not what you think of in your mind as Brooklyn today. If you're a younger person and your vision is of like gentrification and tons of trust fund, activists, college kids, or people making some sort of artisan arts and crafts crap, and somehow having the ability to afford a storefront there or a kiosk or something. I haven't been there in years myself, but I know that's what people joke about. Very upscale, hipstery, even though hipsters aren't a thing anymore, kind of situation that is really unaffordable for most people. Brooklyn in 1992, not the same demographic, not the same crime statistics, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So he says, they were moving slowly, but they had their eyes on me the whole time. They were almost on top of me when I got to my stop. And I used an old New York trick. The doors opened, and I sat still, pretending like I wasn't getting off, until the doors closing chime sounded, at which point I dashed off the train and up the stairs. I heard a lot of shouting and door banging behind me. Another time, I think it was like a week later, I came up out of the station, and an old guy made like he had a gun in his pocket and told me to give him all my money. I was in a very good, very excited mood because I had laid down a lot of tracks that day, and I had a cassette of some rough mixes with me. I threw a quarter at him, which hit him in his forehead. Cheerfully told him to go fuck himself and ran home. One more little bit that I clipped from his blog. It's a black and white photo, a guy up on top of a street sign. It says Parisier. I can't read the rest of his jacket is sort of draped over it, or maybe it's a lady, I don't know. I'll read from the text, but it's black and white. There's what appear to be rockets going off in the sky. The person that's climbed up on top of the street sign has a big long black jacket and a long polka dot scarf and a big old bottle. It looks like a bottle of wine, tilted up in some sort of celebration. It says December 31st, 2011. So that's when he wrote this blog post. Richard Avedon, Brandenburg Gate, number 1, Berlin, New Year's Eve, 1989. I was in Berlin a week before this, during White Zombie's first tour of Europe, a freezing, grueling, but vastly interesting affair. We spent Christmas alone in a room in a Berlin club, and everyone in the band was sick but me. But we did manage to make it to the wall, where people from East Germany were streaming through for the first time. On this same tour, we played... By the way, if this is the tour I'm thinking of that Sean talked about, if I were to be a little... If I were to be judgmental, or create reasons for things that I have no verification, let us remember that possibly he could be the only one in decent health, because he's the only one that isn't actually completely broke or a vegetarian. And that's not to say you can't eat healthy when you're vegetarian. It's that their vegetarian options during that tour were literally bread, and that's it. There's like not a lot of nutrients there. So he Ivan is broke because he spent all of his money in the first week on leather pants, and Sean and Rob are vegetarians. So maybe Jay is the only one that's not sick for nutritional reasons. He says they're streaming through for the first time. On the same tour, we played in Ljubljana and Zagreb, in part of communist Yugoslavia, and we slept in an old slaughterhouse, and I mean in a room with drains for blood, in Hamburg, and we were on the last ferry allowed to cross the English Channel in the worst storm in 10 years. We arrived to find uprooted trees and overturned trucks, and the show got canceled. And we played a socialist squat in an old aircraft factory in Italy, and a farmhouse in Switzerland, and a military academy under a portrait of Marshal Tito, and you can't make this stuff up. So I think he's posted the photograph by Richard Avedon. The title of it is Brandenburg Gate number 1 from Berlin, New Year's Eve 89, and he's just saying these are the events that took place a week after we came through town. Below that, these are just my notes that I wrote down over a year ago. Remember that Craig Kilborn interview? Very disrespectful, like Letterman, without the subversive geek charm. That's a reference to me seeing Rob Zombie in what I believe was his his first round of press appearances to promote Hellbilly Deluxe. This is after the Private Parts film premiere has taken place, and he played it live with his solo backup band of people wearing masks on their heads. So I don't know who was all playing. It could be imagined that it was John Tempesta, Blasco, and Riggs, and basically playing to tracks with Howard Stern coming out on stage and singing through the Al Jurgensen distorted warbly flangery, whatever you call it, modulated microphone noise. So you can't tell that, Howard Stern's not a singer, very, very heavily affected. I digress. I saw this interview on Craig Kilborn's late night show, which was after David Letterman, I believe. And, Craig's really smarmy, and he's not engaging or endearing and doesn't seem very likable. Rob's there to just sort of, announce he's got a new album and be interviewed about it. And Craig wants to talk about the breakup of the band and, why go solo now? And Rob was like, well, it's after all these years. It's one thing when you're young and you got nothing and you're going to split everything equally 5 ways and stuff. But then, all these years later, he's sort of implying that like he does a lot of the work himself. I'm kind of putting words in his mouth, but he's just like essentially saying, not everyone's contributing the same amount. As far as I'm concerned, why not go my own way and do my own thing? And then, because after this is one of the part I specifically do remember him saying, because, after all these years, I got to give the drummer, an equal amount, really. So, if you're already not getting along with your band, I think that makes sense. And if you're not going to be happy unless you're in charge of everything, I think that makes perfect sense. Other than that, and like one other comment I think I talked about already previously about him, being annoyed about somebody else in the band taking credit for More Human Than Human. I think that those are the worst things I've heard Rob say about his former bandmates. I think that's one of the things I respect about him. He really did want to move on and did not have any interest. I think around the time Sinister Urge came out or something like that, and a journalist asked, what do you think of, do you keep tabs on the other band members, and what do you think of what they're up to? And he says, I have absolutely no fucking clue what anybody else is doing, which is pretty much true of Rob Zombie when you ask him about anybody. So he's an isolated kind of guy. He's got a small group of friends. He makes the things happen the way he wants them to, and he gets to keep the rewards for what they are. Seems like he's pretty damn effective at accomplishing his goals.
I mean business. I'm putting it down there. I ain't hearing no amens, but I ain't wanting any. No. Hellfire. Hellfire. All right.
I was so bummed that I left the band and they got bigger, and then because the tours and everything got bigger, and I left at a point where I was like, holy shit, if I would have stuck through
right
and put through, I would be in front of these big stadiums and blah blah blah.
Yep.
But then I would talk to Shauna and she would be so like, Ivan, you fucking left at the perfect time because things just turned to shit. When you left, we were not a family anymore. We don't ever hang out. None of us hang out anymore at all. There's no more family. We were a family. There's no more family.
You can see that in her book with her photographs, because that's the time that, luckily, because you're touring with so many other bands that you've never toured with before, she's now all the photos are of her hanging out with other people in other bands. You know? So there's plenty to do to keep yourself distracted on tour with like new friends that you're making and new parties to have, because you're not a family with the band that you went there with anymore, you know. And Rob, I'm sure Rob was just sort of sequestered on his bus with his girlfriend and, you know, making plans for the future. And I do want to reference one specific video I saw maybe a year ago, where it's a small show. It's still a club. It's still in a club. It's the debut of Phil on drums, the guy that took over after you left. That he was the guy that was playing with them live when they were releasing stuff like some soundtrack stuffs, the Children of the Grave cover, I Am Hell from the Beavis and Butthead Experience, and the Airheads soundtrack, stuff like that. And before they go in the studio with John Tempesta, obviously, and then finish it out with him. But there's this club show, and someone posted like shitty handy cam footage of Rob's introducing, I think it's I Am Hell, which is one of the first things post Sexorcisto that they put out. And he's making comments about like, well, this is our new drummer. The last guy left because he's a Christian and he won't put up with blasphemous heavy metal songs anymore, and he's gone. And I thought, that sounds like a really dumb excuse and a really mean-spirited thing to say about a guy that you could have just said, you know, this is our new drummer. This is our new drummer. Give him a hand. Move on, you know?
Because our other drummer just yesterday said he found Jesus and could not do this anymore. What a fucking puss. A fucking pussy or what? So we got one fucking day to get a guy who knows the songs. So we find this guy hanging out at Denny's, fucking sitting at Denny's doing nothing but eating a fucking disgusting lunch. We said, get on stage and play anyway, because we don't need no fucking Jesus fucking pussy ass drummers in our band. On that note, the song that made Ivan quit to be a puss, right here.
It was a ruse, a ploy, a plot, a plan, a charade, a conspiracy, a sham. We've been conned, hoodwinked, bamboozled, flim-flammed, and the wool pulled over our eyes even.
What an interesting New York accent you have, Grandma, for someone from Massachusetts. And it's very strange that you think that it's funny that you got a guy from Denny's, fucking Denny's yesterday to like play all the songs. And you would think that's a real fucking funny comedy premise, that you found a guy at Denny's, but you don't know how to tell a joke and the crowd don't react to it. So...
I mean, it's just a perfect example of just what a dick, an asshole he is, you know? Like, I mean, well, you know, that's him, and that's why I left.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense now. I mean, geez, you know, I'll probably try to find that and put the audio in. I'll edit the audio in of that, just because it was very strange. He seemed like a really grouchy guy, and all the audio I found of bootlegs of that era, and like he didn't really want to be there. But I always wondered if that was so. I guess the reason I bring it up is because as a fan, as someone who got older and kind of got to know more about how people, you know, do things in the entertainment business, it made me wonder, like, how much of that grouchy onstage complaining was him really being uncomfortable or angry about something, and how much was him trying to be a tough guy and kind of play up this attitude. Because when he was in Seattle on the Los Exorcisto tour, and this was after you had departed, because initially White Zombie was coming to the Paramount Theater with Anthrax on the Sound of White Noise tour and with Quicksand. And and then you guys got big enough that you didn't have to support anymore. So White Zombie didn't play that night. White Zombie came back when I first saw them in like 93, I want to say, at the Paramount with The Obsessed and Prong. And you were not in the band. Sean had just had her appendix out the night before, or 2 days before. Yeah. And she was rolling around on a little office chair playing bass. It was really inspiring to see. And And Rob was going like, hey, I heard you all heard the terrible news, didn't you? And the crowd were just like, what is he talking about? And he's like, yeah, I bet you're all real sad nowadays, aren't you? And everyone's like, huh? Your fucking local hero, John Candy, died today. And I'm like, where is this coming from? Like, this isn't like fun stage banter. This isn't like...
Because John Candy is Canadian. He's not from Seattle. It was confusing for everyone at the Paramount Theater that night.
You know what I mean? Like I've seen confrontational rock singers in live shows that are actually kind of entertaining in a way or provocative.
Yeah.
Where's this coming from? Is he just trying to be like, hey, remember, I'm a grouchy guy from New York. I'm not an LA. We're not an LA band. Come on, we're tough. Or I don't know. I just felt like it was overcompensating for something. Because he didn't do that. He didn't do that years later when there was more pyro going off and giant robots on stage. He didn't have to, you know. But
well, you know, that's
was he just miserable on tour?
Yeah. Well, you know, he always found it always seemed like it was difficult for him to really socialize with people. Like he maybe he just didn't know how to fit in, and just needed to put this front. He needs this big front so that he can hide behind it. When he was more humble and reachable, I got along with him, and then you know things just shifted.
Yeah,
and that's him. He keeps shifting everything. You know, let me tell you, when Shauna and Rob were dating, the band was doable.
Yeah,
it was doable.
Right.
During the tour, I saw the shift happen. I saw him with other women. And I saw a distance going on between them. And then I realized Rob changed. And Shauna could not apologize for his awful behavior anymore. Because Rob doesn't know how to apologize. Rob bucks people. Rob, you know, he does things that are unacceptable, and some people forgive him, and some, you know, or just move on.
Right.
And I was done trying to save the situation because, you know, I realized after all those years, it's time for me to say, there's other things on this planet I can do than this.
Yeah.
You know. And I know it was a huge thing. I loved the music we did and everything we did together, but just being like having to travel with that guy, I just couldn't put up with it anymore. And I'm glad I could have been dead. You know,
yeah.
I mean, I had visions of blood. Like I was wanting to. There was one time he was like walking down the stairs in front of me, and I wanted to kick him down those stairs.
Yeah. Because
I was just so sick and tired of his behavior. And, you know, and I'm sure you heard stories on, because I shared in plenty of interviews about all the other details. But anyway, yeah.
I remember being at the end of the road with a band I was in for 7 years, man. And, you know, this is just how universal human relationships are. I'm not saying I did anything musically the level of a lot of other guys did, but no matter what level you were on, if you toured with people long enough, you've been through this stuff. And,
you get it.
Yeah. It's one of those things that people that don't play in bands keep trying to say, or they try to compare it to oh, it's like being in a family, or it's like working with somebody. It's like, no, there's nothing like this. There's no other communal experience with other people that you have to rely on them for your safety, your well-being, your mental well-being,
right,
your creative satisfaction, and and being able to drive at like 4 a.m. to say, you know,
oh man, tell me about it.
And finances.
It's crazy.
And finances.
Oh,
like,
I know. know. What do you do?
It doesn't make any sense. But that's why.
Yeah.
That's why some people. I mean, obviously, Rob Zombie is the guy that needed to be just in charge of his own outfit and hire and fire people. He's one of those Dave Mustaine types. I think he needs to be. He has had a long career because he made the change into someone who's just the boss, like Alice Cooper, and go on that way.
Yeah.
Don't forget to visit our refreshment center during the intermission or any time. You love the tasty array of snacks we have to offer. So will the youngsters. Everything is quality and so good.
As a nice sort of wrap up for the later years of White Zombie, straight from Sean's sort of introduction section of her book, she has a sort of a compressed timeline of the whole experience from her point of view, and I read from the beginning of that in the first episode. She's talking later in that chunk of the book about the Los Exorcisto years and touring, opening for Anthrax, Megadeth, Danzig, Testament, whoever, Pantera. She says, at this point, the band had taken over every aspect of our lives. Rob and I wound up splitting as a couple. Our relationship basically having morphed into this monster that we put all of our energy into. And somewhere around then, Beavis and Butthead gave us the thumbs up on MTV and record sales took off. This is also when I got an extra boost of notoriety since their show was red hot and they had singled me out specifically as cool and the chick from White Zombie. We always had support from Ricky Rackman at Headbangers Ball, but now we were getting all kinds of video and radio exposure. The year-and-a-half tour quickly turned into a 2.5-year tour. White Zombie became a household name. Shows became very rewarding, with lots of screaming new fans and high energy. Headlining arenas with phantasmic lights, pyro, and film. We were finally able to give the fans the show we had always wanted to. It was hard to remember playing small clubs to 3 people and filling up the room with our smoke machine to avoid them. Things just got bigger, crazier, and more fun every day. Our audience kept growing, and we were winning over the headliners' audience daily. This is when the Rock and Metal Boys Club became extremely apparent to me. But while being the only girl in a boys' locker room scenario should have been uncomfortable, somehow it wasn't. Hanging out with these bands and roadies, I was constantly exposed to what we call van talk. Something like locker room talk, but much, much worse. We're talking guys describing and photographing their toilet remains, horrible stories of other bodily functions, whoring, boozing, and gambling. On bus tours, you are practically living with the other bands and roadies 24/7. People start filling up the many hours backstage trying to amuse each other in completely insane ways. It says inane ways. Playing drinking and punching games, streaking, pulling elaborate pranks. I am not talking about the guys in my band, however, who were more fish out of water in the metal world than I was. But I found all of this completely absurd and hilarious. Not only was I around for all the backstage humor, but when it came to drinking, I could usually keep up with the best of them, even Pantera. They would include me in their drinking and gambling sessions, with Daryl constantly throwing $100 bills on top of my lame $1 bets. I was even dragged out by the other bands and roadies a few times to strip clubs. They would beg me to go with them because the strippers were dancing to White Zombie songs and wanted to meet me. I knew they were just using me as bait, but it was fun, and we were all in on the absurdity of the situation. Every band or roadie I ever encountered treated me with camaraderie and respect, as though I was one of the guys. Many of them also treated me like a little sister, which was nice. It was so much fun. And so many of these guys will always be family to me. My motto back then came from Spinal Tap: have a good time all the time. And as Lux Interior so wisely sang, life is short. Sorry about the page-turning noise there. Although neither Jay nor Rob lived by my motto, I soon had a comrade in partying, Johnny Tempesta. Our drummer position has switched out 2 more times, and finally settling on this amazingly talented and funny guy. Johnny and I like to work hard, but we like to play hard too. Some of the best times I remember with Johnny were the many nights on tour whooping it up with the Reverend Horton Heat guys, both of us riding on their bus at times just to keep the party going. One time, Johnny, the Reverend guys, and I were all piling out of their bus at 6 a.m. in Atlanta after a long night of partying and realized Keanu Reeves was walking in front of us towards our hotel. His tour bus for Dog Star had apparently just pulled up. Johnny and some of the Reverend Horton Heat guys tried to say hi to him, but we must have looked completely debauched and crazy because he actually started to run away from us, first slowly and then quicker and quicker. We all fell down laughing. We took every opportunity to have fun, party with the other bands, and see the sights. We toured our second record to Geffen, Astro Creep 2000, for a year and a half and had a blast. There were all kinds of events, Grammys, movie premieres, MTV parties, radio shows, etc., interspersed with the touring. Back in LA, I would live in hotels and hang out every night in the Viper Room's tiny VIP lounge filled with rock stars, supermodels, and movie stars. I remember tripping over Naomi Campbell trying to get over to Lemmy from Motorhead one night. Now we're back to the part I was talking about earlier, the highlights. There were so many, but they wouldn't have happened without all the early years of struggling and hard work. And our amazing fans. Metal fans are the best, and they are die-hard with you all the way forever. No band ever had truer fans than White Zombie. Then, if I skip ahead towards the last paragraph, she says, I was the only girl in a guy's world, playing in an unknown underground band that made a slow 10-year climb to the top of the charts, going multi-platinum and playing arenas, despite some inter-band turmoil, including multiple firings and an inter-band breakup. It was one wild ride, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Final thoughts I had, I wanted to touch on Boundless Joy. You're playing on that is definitely something that would satisfy the old school White Zombie fan. You're working on those toms a lot, and you didn't go Dave Brubeck on us in the last 15, 20 years, you know. And it's very consistent, but also is this a thing that just all drummers do as time goes on? It seems like everyone has a tendency to downsize the kit as time goes on, and fewer toms, fewer kick drums, maybe a smaller diameter too becomes a little more attractive as time goes on. Do you feel like you can kind of do more with your own versatility behind a smaller kit than you don't need all the extras to kind of keep you busy?
Yeah. It's a combination of all of the above. You know, when you're touring in a smaller vehicle, having a smaller kit will basically save you from pissing off everyone in the band.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the double pedal works great. A double pedal for the bass drum, but I do still play with the 3-rack toms, floor tom, because I do utilize each drum, but you can do a lot of stuff without the variety of toms. But you know, having the different pitches and the different toms, I like to use the different toms for that. You know, for the sounds and particular sections of songs. But I love the bigger kits.
Yeah,
I do love the bigger kits.
Yeah,
and even though we can do it all with a smaller kit, it doesn't sound the same too.
No.
My bass drum, I still use the same bass drum I toured with La Secta Cisco.
No shit.
When I toured, I got endorsement with Reno. I got the Acousticon 516, these high-density fiber shells that produce more vibration than any wood shell because it's so dense.
Yeah.
It'll jet, so it's super big sounding and loud.
Yeah.
And that's badass with a double bass. My bass drum is a 24 by 20 by 24 big-ass bass drum. Wow. It's a single kick, but I also have a double bass drum set in the studio. So after I left White Zombie, I ended up selling half of that kit, but I still have the best part of it. You know, I got one kick drum, right. I got all the rack toms, and one of the floor toms. I didn't need both floor toms. To be honest with you, I never used 2 floor toms. I prefer having the extra rack tom.
And cymbals?
Yeah. Cymbals, I still go with the 2 Chinas, one on each side, 2 crashes in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Big ride. I still use a big power ride I had from back in the day.
Yeah.
But I did get an endorsement with Soul Tone cymbals, so I'm using their cymbals, and they were able to recreate it with their, the same big heavy ride ping ride I used from Zildjian. Soul Tone was able to
replicate that.
Replicate it, the density of the whole thing and the weight of the metal. So
awesome.
So that's cool, man. Yeah, I dig it. I love the sounds. The hi-hats sound great.
Yeah,
I got a nice setup I'm happy with. With playing live, I still using that Remo kit, the chrome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the one.
How about in the last few years, any players that kind of inspired you, young or old guys you never got into when you were young, or anyone new on the scene that blew your mind or gave you some kind of inspiration to do things a little differently?
One of the greatest players would be a violinist from Cirque du Soleil. I was introduced to him.
Whoa! And
then we got the band Healer going. You heard my band Healer, but that is like a heavy metal Middle Eastern kind of thing. And his playing on the violin is just mind blowing.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of combined his sound, on that record with some heavy guitars and it's a beautiful thing, with percussion going on as well.
Yeah.
Not as raw sounding; it's more produced, big, with percussion, violin, female singer, male singer. It's just a lot, but some great songs. And then with Boundless Joy, I'm stripping it down to good old heavy metal.
Right. Power trio.
Yeah. So it's a lot easier this way. Less players to have to deal with.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're no perfect. The 3 of us definitely got our hands full.
Yeah.
Rock and roll music and why I preach against it, and I believe with all of my heart that it is a contributing factor to our juvenile delinquency of today.
Looks like I just confirmed I'm going over to that date right now.
Breaking news. Exclusive. No, I'm breaking the news. It's an exclusive Ivan DePrume press release.
Yeah. It looks like we're playing July 12th. Hybrid Festival in Bremerton.
Oh, beautiful.
Bremerton.
Yeah.
And he's looking into getting us some other gigs around that area, so it looks like we might do another little tour up there.
Good.
Hell yeah.
I'll see you in mid-July then, sir, for one gig or no. I want to say thank you so much for all this time. We're about like 80 minutes strong. You were really, really, really generous about this to a total stranger, man. And I can't tell you how much it means to me.
Yeah, it's totally cool, man. Because I saw, what you've done before for the band, and I'm like, you have more insight than a lot of other people that interviewed me about our history. So, to me that, hits home. So I'm like, hell yeah.
Thanks,
you even
man.
knew that my mom, you even knew that my mom freaking opened the CBGB's doors. So I'm like, well, hey, there you go, man.
I'm a library nerd first and a rock and roll guitarist second, or maybe the other way around.
There you go.
I loved it, man. This was a great talk. Be in touch and take care. Have a great rest of your week, man.
For sure. You too. Thanks a lot.
Please remember to replace the speaker on the post when you leave the theater.
What more needs to be said after all of that, friends? And hopefully some White Zombie fans that are hearing my voice for the first time. Maybe some folks that came back after the first couple. I can't help but be more inspired to do better, do right, support people around me, maybe a little bit harder. Maybe we can ratchet it up a little notch, take an example from Ivan and his mentality, and let's just try to be a little extra when it comes to supporting people that need it around us. Get out of our own heads, and remember that, we all deserve to be loved. We all deserve to have a good time and have creative things that inspire us. Above all else, of course, if you've heard this podcast before, you know how we end. Above all else, no matter what, rock and roll is the best. And so, my friend, are you. Now, today's outro. I'll let Max start it off.
Oh, shit. This is where the DeCarlo dick down begins.
Take it away, Gilbert.
Rock-a-bye, my baby, with a Dixie melody.
There's wickedness attempting to completely cover this nation in perversion and seductive seducing spirits. I have never seen more images of more mermaids and water people in my life. That's a division in the kingdom of darkness. And they're highly technologically advanced.